This video is sponsored by TrainPal. Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of my Thameslink series. In this series, I'll be delving into the history of Thameslink, its operators since privatisation, and the current state of the railway. Today is the second episode covering First Capital Connect. In episode 1, we looked at First Capital Connect from April 2006 to mid-2011, and today we'll pick up from where we left off, in 2011 until 2014, the end of FCC. We'll be looking at whether First Capital Connect could be deemed a success or a failure, as well as looking over the progress of the Thameslink 2000 programme during this period. If you enjoy this episode, do consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and potentially joining my membership or Patreon from as little as 99p a month to support my work. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the video. Let's have a brief overview of what Thameslink actually was, and how this led to the formation of First Capital Connect. Thameslink was first envisioned in the late 1970s and early 1980s, when Thatcher's government and the Greater London Council allocated around £5 million to open a stretch of track linking Farringdon to Blackfriars, allowing services to commence, operated by Class 319s, from Bedford to Brighton under the Network South East brand, commencing in 1998. The service, as we have seen in my previous video on Thameslink, was a huge success, expanding to Wimbledon and Sutton in the 1990s, before being privatised under the Thameslink brand name by Govia, who did not change the network a whole lot. Around the same time, Thameslink 2000, a project to upgrade the Thameslink network, expanding it and providing more capacity for 12-car trains, was being drawn up. First Capital Connect commenced operations in April 2006, taking it over from the previous Govia-ran operator. The new franchise would cover Thameslink and Great Northern routes, formerly known as West Anglia Great Northern. FCC ran services through central London and the Thameslink core, from Bedford to Brighton, Luton to Sutton, and formerly ran services via the widened lines to Barbican and Moorgate. All FCC services in Thameslink ran via London St Pancras, Farringdon, City Thameslink and London Blackfriars, also known as the core. As well as this, First Capital Connect ran services out of London King's Cross and Moorgate towards Stevenage, Welwyn, Peterborough, Cambridge and Kings Lynn on the Great Northern routes. Essentially, FCC ran almost two separate routes, the Thameslink routes and the Great Northern routes. This meant its fleet was separated and rarely mixed. For Thameslink services, FCC used nearly 20-year-old Class 319s, which were able to run on both third rail and overhead electric power, as well as much newer Class 377s, which were initially built for Southern, but transferred to First Capital Connect to enable them to run 12-car services. For Great Northern services, FCC used Class 321s, Class 365s, Class 317s, and Class 313s, with the 313s being used on the Moorgate branch. So, let's recap the events of June 2011, when the Siemens were given the contract to construct 1,200 carriages for use on the Thameslink network, to replace the Class 319s and 377s from 2015, with full introduction from 2018. The 377-5s, despite being ordered initially for Southern services, were confirmed to be joining South Eastern once the new trains had been brought into service, with the Class 319s anticipated to move to the northwest, where the lines out of Blackpool North had been electrified. The new trains would be built at Siemens plant in Germany, as well as in Tyne and Wear, with the new trains being part of the Desiro City family name, later designated Class 700s. Whether First Group would run these new trains and franchise was unknown at the time. Elsewhere in 2011, in September, a Class 365 was involved in a collision on a level crossing with a tractor, with the tractor driver sent to hospital, with the line, near Downham Market, being closed due to damage to the overhead line supports. The Class 365 unit, 365532, was damaged, but was later repaired, being the second 365 out of service due to damage after a second unit had collided near Littleport earlier in the year. November saw new sidings, called Jarrett sidings, named after a famous railwayman, open in Bedford, being able to accommodate 12-car trains, in preparation for the rollout of the December 2011 timetable. December 2011 saw the first 12-car Thameslink services commence, thanks to more Class 377s being subleased from Southern for the time being. The service would add 10,000 additional peak seats, with the viaduct over Borough Market to provide extra capacity for Blackfriars and Charing Cross trains also being completed by December 2011. March 2012 saw the Department for Transport announce who could potentially be in the running for the next Thameslink and Great Northern franchise, with First Capital Connect's contract being cut to September 2013. Abellio, First Group, Govia, MTR and Stagecoach had been listed as the 4 bidders for the next franchise, which would run for 7 years. April saw FCC get in hot water after they were caught by Which magazine to be selling first-class tickets for trains which had no first-class offerings. Despite surcharging 63% for a first-class ticket between Luton and Wimbledon, the Class 319s which offered the service had no first-class on, with first class being declassified on all Thameslink services, hence did not need the extra ticket to travel. First Capital Connect suggested this was because passengers could change for other services to Wimbledon, which did provide first class, but which said that the more convenient way to use the ticket was the direct service, rather than changing, paying up to £4 for a tube journey, and then using first class coaches out of Waterloo or Vauxhall, hence which claimed it was an illegitimate ticket and effectively a scam. May 2012 saw Blackfriars Station officially open its 2 new platforms, taking the station to 4 platforms in total. Although reconstruction work had not fully been finished, with lots of finishing touches needed, the station had been transformed, now covering the width of the Thames, with 2 new entrances built. The station would have 4 platforms, 2 through platforms and 2 bay platforms for peak time terminating services, with the station being home to the world's longest solar panel bridge. This coincided with services to Sevenoaks via the Catford Loop line commencing on Thameslink. Elsewhere in 2012, there was further good news for FCC passengers, although not the company. Someone had managed to find a loophole in the ticketing that meant that if passengers on weekends wanted to travel from London to many places along the First Capital Connect network, it could be cheaper purchasing a return ticket from your destination rather than a single. For example, passengers who wanted to take the 1503 King's Cross to Cambridge service could pay the flat single off-peak fare of £21.20, or buy an off-peak return from Cambridge to King's Cross from just £16. This was all perfectly legal, according to National Rail Conditions of Carriage. Services to Stevenage, Hitchin and Hatfield were all included in this loophole. Of course, if you wanted to buy a return ticket from London to Cambridge, it would be cheaper to buy a return ticket, and this was FCC's main argument, suggesting that it benefited many people and boosted rail passengers, with more people using return tickets anyway, although I'm not sure people were complaining to FCC about this loophole. However, for some, tickets got more expensive in 2012, when it was revealed that First Capital Connect had altered Carnet tickets, which was a European initiative where you buy 10 tickets in bulk for the price of 9, reducing the need to buy tickets at the ticket office and able to mix peak and off-peak tickets together. First Capital Connect had made these tickets so that you had to include 5 inbound and 5 outbound tickets, meaning that half the tickets, if you worked 9 to 5 for example, were useless, so you had to buy more expensive peak day return tickets. This meant for many passengers a backdoor rise had occurred, without many even realising, and without consultation, with Passenger Focus suggesting that companies should promote the use of Carnet tickets and not alter them without telling passengers. First Capital Connect highlighted that Carnets weren't taken by staff upon exiting a station, meaning that they were open to fraud, and some passengers used them again and again, costing the railway industry up to £400 million. First Capital Connect highlighted that the Carnets would now be taken when passengers passed through a station barrier by staff members, and that its policy was now brought in line with other operators in the UK. However, a lack of notice had led to passenger dissatisfaction and a lack of trust between passengers and the operator. The end of 2012 wasn't much better for FCC either. They were voted the worst train operator in the UK by commuters in a Which poll. Just 40% of commuters said that they were overall satisfied with First Capital Connect, coming bottom of the pile below Greater Anglia, South Eastern and sister company First Great Western. However, in the same period, irregularities were discovered in the UK franchising process, so the UK government hastily extended the contract of FCC until 2014, when the franchise process could be rectified. Now luckily, there aren't irregularities in TrainPal's ticketing system, with them helping you to save on every train trip. TrainPal guarantees the best price on UK train tickets, using split ticket technology to find you the cheapest fare possible. And if you find a cheaper fare elsewhere, they'll refund the difference. Plus, you can grab a rail card through TrainPal to save a third on every journey, with an extra exclusive discount only available on their app. You can use the promo code Vanmanyo to get up to 20% off any rail card purchased, and using the same code, you can get up to 5% off UK and European train ticket vouchers. There are also no booking fees, and with split ticketing, you're always guaranteed to save on every journey. And if you're new to TrainPal, you can get up to £10 on a welcome pack for just signing up. So what are you waiting for? Download the TrainPal app today in the link in the description below. Thanks for TrainPal for sponsoring this video, and now let's look at the bidders who were selected for the next franchise. Abellio, First Group, Govia, MTR and Stagecoach were all reselected as bidders for the next franchise in 2014. January 2013 saw the Department for Transport confirm this new franchise would now include Southern, as well as the Thameslink and Great Northern lines, with Gatwick Express also included in the operations for the next franchise, which would be known as the Thameslink Southern and Great Northern franchise. The contract would now be a management one, whereby the Department for Transport would still have a say in the operation of the franchise, due to the Thameslink programme upgrades. In relation to the Thameslink programme, in 2013, work commenced on the new London Bridge Station upgrade, which received 3 new through platforms created, several new entrances created, and a general rebuild of platforms and the station. In March, FCC was once again criticised for its poor customer satisfaction levels when it wrongfully fined a passenger before accusing them of not understanding the rules. This came after Southern was running a promotional offer for tickets that was also valid on for FCC services, but FCC ticket inspectors did not realise this. First Capital Connect refunded the passenger and apologised. Elsewhere in March, construction drills affected services on the Moorgate line. Services between Welwyn and Stevenage to Moorgate were stopped after drills came through the ceiling from construction work, with the Northern City line closed for several days. Also in July, FCC was slandered after a staff member purposely ignored a blind man calling for assistance. Even though the man was in First Capital Connect uniform, FCC suggested that he was an agency cleaner worker. The worker was eventually called back by other passengers, who realised the cleaner hadn't helped the blind person, who apparently said he wasn't allowed to help. FCC apologised and said they would increase training for all staff to assist any passengers. In July, FCC confirmed that their Class 365s would receive an interior refresh at Wolverton, undertaken by Bombardier, with two 317-7s brought in from Anglia to cover for the units while they were being refreshed. September, however, was a bad month for First Capital Connect, as they were fined £75,000 for the incident between Kentish Town and St Pancras back in 2011 in the previous episode, which left 800 passengers stranded, whilst 40 of them had to walk down the live track, declaring that First Capital Connect had breached health and safety regulations. Another ticketing fraud issue emerged in October after St Albans' lawyer found the annual FCC fare to London was £700 cheaper if it went from Watford North. On the National Rail Planners, anyone with a ticket from Watford North to London could also travel First Capital Connect from St Albans station into London on a completely different line. He, perhaps rightly, got stopped by ticket inspectors, who suggested the website was incorrect. The man then had to buy another season ticket for £1,600 from St Albans to Elstree, as the Watford North ticket was only valid via Elstree, not St Albans, according to First Capital Connect. He then sued First Capital Connect, who settled the decision out of court, although FCC attempted to fight his claim, despite the Association of Train Operating Companies saying that the route the lawyer took was technically valid and legal. He was later awarded £2,100 due to FCC continuing to fight the case. FCC suggested that the loophole came from British Rail and rectified the loophole so tickets from Watford North to London were no longer valid via St Albans and First Capital Connect, instead only with London Midland via Watford Junction. In October, First Capital Connect got in more hot water for tweeting that climate change was an illusion in relation to a complaint about the trains wasting their heating. As expected, many people disagreed and replied with proof on their Twitter account that climate change was indeed real. The First Capital Connect Twitter account continued to debate passengers about climate change, using Vostok ice core data to suggest that climate change was natural. Eventually, another First Capital Connect staff member took over the account and apologised, highlighting how FCC was indeed environmentally aware, with Jay, the person previously tweeting on the account, being spoken to by the company and potentially losing his job. Ironically, a week later, FCC launched their Green Week initiative to tell people what the company were doing for the environment. Some commuters suggested that they would be avoiding FCC now after the fiasco. To end their last full year for the franchise, FCC threatened a lady with court action after a staff member sold her the incorrect ticket from a ticket office where, on a packed train, she was handed a fine by an inspector. She was forced to pay the full ticket that she should have had, as well as a fine. The ticket inspector and First Capital Connect says that there was no proof she actually went to a ticket office rather than a machine, except Kentish Town, where she purchased a ticket, had no self-service ticket machines, so it was impossible to buy from a machine. It turned out the price difference between the correct and incorrect ticket was just 90p, and when The Guardian brought up the case with First Capital Connect, they withdrew court action, and the lady was refunded, as well as being given a pair of first-class tickets on the FCC network. It only took a major newspaper and several months to get to that point, showing how FCC prioritised their profits over passengers, charging extortionate prices for overcrowded trains. January 2014 saw FCC unveil their newly refreshed Class 365 trains, which received several improvements, including new seat upholstery, new flooring, and a new neutral white livery for the potential franchise changeover in September. Improvements for disabled passengers were also undertaken, with new passenger information systems installed and better disability-friendly areas. David Statham, First Capital Connect Managing Director, said the train looked and felt like a brand new train. This upgrade, in conjunction with a 10% New Year's discount, led to better journeys for passengers, but ones which are still mostly overcrowded during the peak. January the 28th saw the first mock-up unveiled of the new Class 700 trains, which were presented by Siemens, the Department for Transport, and FCC at the Excel Centre, London. The train mock-up included the full interior of the new train, which would significantly boost capacity on Thameslink, thanks to 55 of the units being 12 carriages long, and 60 of them being 8 carriages, meaning that 4-car Thameslink services would no longer be a sight for passengers. The trains would be groundbreaking, with no gangway doors, an increase in seats, modern PIS, and safety systems, as well as a state-of-the-art cab to work with new signalling systems, and an overall capacity increase of up to 40%. The trains would hopefully enter service by spring 2016, slightly after they were expected to enter service, with delays to design and construction, and would be after the first Capital franchise ended in 2014, unless, of course, they got their franchise renewed. Also, in January, a passenger was potentially on course to losing her job after her season ticket was lost, costing £4,250, which FCC said they could not replace, as she had already lost 2 season tickets previously. After writing to The Guardian, they replied stating the lady in question hadn't lost 2 previous season tickets, but 2 monthly tickets instead, costing £400, not £4,000. Hence, she could not be denied a replacement. After The Guardian brought this up with First Capital Connect, as with most things that happen when a major tabloid gets involved, it was resolved swiftly, and the passenger received her replacement season ticket, with FCC calling it an exceptional gesture of goodwill. Once again, FCC were more interested in profits than passengers, with a national tabloid the only way to resolve disputes. February 2014 saw the Department for Transport announce a 6-month direct award contract extension for FCC until September. April saw that the Class 319s would indeed be cascaded from FCC to Serco Abellio Northern by the end of the year. The first 2 units would move north by December to run services on the newly electrified Liverpool, Manchester and Blackpool North lines, with 10 more units eventually joining the firm by the end of 2015. 2014 also saw the new Class 700s reach 100 mph on a test at a test track in Wageburg, Germany, showing the progress Siemens were making with the construction of the new trains. In May 2014, 4 months before the end of the franchise, it was formally announced that Go Ahead and Keolis had won the new franchise for the Thameslink Southern, Gatwick Express and Great Northern services under the new Govia Thameslink Railway brand name. Govia already ran Southern and Gatwick Express at the time, which would be inserted into the new larger franchise. The franchise would be slightly different, with Govia handing over revenue to the government rather than paying premiums. Govia would be paid a flat fare of £9 billion over 7 years, with 3% profit expected. Govia would oversee new Southern and Gatwick Express units, as well as the new Thameslink Class 700s mentioned earlier, as well as new stock for operations to Moorgate. Thameslink services would also be extended one day to Peterborough, Cambridge, Ashford, Littlehampton and East Grinstead, providing up to 24 trains per hour in each direction through the core. First Group said that they were proud of the operations that they ran over the 8 years of FCC and had made significant improvements, bowing out of operations on the 13th of September 2014, handing all stock to the new Govia Thameslink Railway Company, who would implement the final Thameslink programme upgrades, whilst infrastructural upgrades continued. So then, were First Capital Connect a success? Well, they did make some improvements. New Class 377s were introduced, Class 365s were refurbished, along with all of First Capital Connect's fleet, and the company had ran the first 12-car train from Bedford to Brighton, as well as other new services, having longer carriages with 30,000 extra seats on the network. However, it was far from plain sailing. Heavy overcrowding during pretty much every peak, high fares, a lack of care for passengers, poor staff customer service, and an ageing fleet of trains hindered FCC's operations. Industrial action and bad weather didn't help them along the way. Services were thus not amazing, although the introduction of 12-car services, thanks to network rail infrastructural upgrades, did show that change was on the horizon, but it would not be First Capital Connect that introduced that change. I hope you've enjoyed this 3rd episode of my Thameslink series, and do let me know if you've travelled on FCC yourself, and if you had any memories of them, good or bad. In the next episode, we'll begin to look at Govia Thameslink Railway, but in the meantime, do consider liking and subscribing if you've enjoyed the video. And also, special thanks to all my YouTube and Patreon members, including First Class members Callum Martin Bell and Crispin McKee, and Business Zone members Andrew Bowen, Anthony Harris, Anthony James Moore, ARK, Connor Grieg, Clive's Travel and Trains, Craig Mitchell 43, Daniel Catton, Dave CDF, Gordon Walker, Jay Teco, JBNEL, Lewis C21, NJT, Real, Scott Wheeler, That Transport Girl, and Will Ho, as well as all my standard premium and standard class members. You can get your name on this list from as little as £2.99 a month, and support me from as little as 99p a month. Thanks so much for all your support, I really do appreciate it, so thank you. Once again, thanks for watching, do join my Discord server and follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky, links in the description below. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.